This is a training video for those of you building newsletters in the Smore platform. One of the great things about Smore is that it has accessibility built in. So there is very little we have to do to fix a Smore newsletter before we share it with our stakeholders. So that's great news. One of the things that we want to think about, however, is making sure we use some of the tools the way they're intended to be used. So for instance, each newsletter should have a title, and the title should adhere to those color contrast standards as well as font size and type. We want to make sure the font size that we use is readable and the right size for a digital platform, and we want to make sure it's the right type. So even when we want to get maybe fancy with our fonts, we need to make sure it's really very readable so that somebody who might have difficulty accessing a digital newsletter can read it without too much trouble. One of the things whenever the newsletter is published is that a user, I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm on a free account. There are some accessibility features that are built in. So if I've published out my newsletter, the reader will have these accessibility tools that they can access. So that means they can enlarge the font and they can also enable high contrast mode. So then we ensure that regardless of the colors that we pick, the contrast will be appropriate for those who need that modification. And then the font can also be enlarged based on their desire or ability for enlarging the font. So that is available to all end users when they open up the newsletter. Another feature, because I'm working on a free account, I don't have it, but another feature that those of you working in the Teams account have is translate. So there are over 130 languages that the newsletter can be translated into, and it would appear on this bar as well, where it says, it would say translate, and then they could select the language they want to translate it into, and then that would translate it to something that fits their needs. So I'm going to go out of this preview and back to my editing. So again, it's built into the platform and how the newsletters are designed. Just like in, say, a Google Doc, we need to have heading hierarchies. This is built in. So whenever I put a title in, that's already going to be identified and tagged as a header. This is a subtitle, and so I would want to make sure I'm using my subtitle, but it will automatically tag that whenever I publish it out. I can add in features or content either by using this plus button here or coming over to the content menu. When I include titles, that also then tags that as part of the heading structure. So in order to get a nice easy way for someone to navigate the sections of the newsletter, using titles would be a really effective way to support that. And again, in the paid for version that most of you are working in, if you turn on table of contents, it will show you your different sections that are in the newsletter for quick navigation through the content. One thing that isn't as clear, but it's available and should be used, is when we include images. So if I click on this picture, this is just a standard picture that was included. I want to hit edit. When I edit, I have the option of entering a title, but what's more important is that I put alternate text in there. So I would want to have something very descriptive that says, and I want to avoid using the words image of, because a screen reader will say that this is an image. So this might be my welcome banner on a classroom chalkboard. And now I have my alternate text, so when the screen reader reads that, it'll say image, welcome banner on classroom chalkboard, or however you would want to describe that. The other important feature, because like we said, this is largely all of those accessibility features are built in, is if we are creating links in our newsletter, like we want to have folks click on a permission slip or something, we need to just make sure that the link that we put in there by using our link tool in the formatter is very descriptive. So instead of click here for the permission form, we might just say, make sure you fill out the permission form for this field trip, and make those words themselves the link, so that it's very clear what is being linked to. A screen reader will identify it as a link, and then the description will tell the reader or the user what the link is for. Another thing to be mindful of is if we are sharing a bunch of information, like for instance, there's text on this particular image. If there's a lot of text in there, then you have to include that in your alternate text. So try to be mindful of what type of pictures you're using and what information you're sharing whenever you provide the alt text. The last thing that we would want to consider or think about is to make sure if we're including video, which this particular example has a video, we would want to make sure that the video we use also has closed captioning embedded in the video, so that someone who is relying on who can't hear the sound has the ability to read the text that is part of that video. So those are things, like I said, the platform itself is largely accessible, but anything we add to the template or the newsletter also should be accessible. So if I'm putting in files, I'm attaching files, all of those need to meet those same accessibility requirements. If I put in photos, I need to make sure I'm including alternative text. If I include videos, my videos need to be captioned so that people who need to or rely on captions for accessing content, they have access to that. So those are the major things to think about with Smore. If you're building in this newsletter platform, you already are a step above the field, just because there are fewer things that you have to fix when you are creating your newsletter. So I hope this is helpful, and that you have success in creating your newsletters on Smore. Thanks.